Hello everybody, this is Yoko Anime Reactions, and I know I just got that video out about what happened to my dad, but I need something to focus on. And because if I don't, I will start thinking about what could happen, and I tend to overthink, and it keeps building, and then I'm getting myself upset. So I'm going to try and focus on this. Okay, where did I end off? Agnes had no idea what all that was about, but she decided it'd be better not to think about it. A lot had happened, and she was tired. Agnes sat back in her seat, putting all thoughts of the day's events out of mind as she sped off toward home. Oh, and here we go. When she got home, she let the servants know she was back before retreating to her own room. Here we go. That's where I ended up, okay. Her father, Count Lefort, had been in attendance at the ball he hadn't been anywhere near the unpleasant scene with Philip, but news of the disturbance would no doubt reach him before the evening was through, along with the news that she was no longer engaged. Agnes had taken an early carriage home, though, so she had arrived long before her father did. She didn't have the energy to wait up for him. Instead, she'd left word that she was to speak to him tomorrow. She didn't even have the energy to bathe. Ooh. After changing, she fell straight into bed. Gosh, what a horrid evening. She didn't know if she was sad, angry, or regretful, or even all three. She supposed she'd probably be crying now that she was officially unengaged, but she didn't really feel like it. Philip wasn't really worth the tears. While talking with Claude, she had been struck by a wave of emotion and hadn't been able to keep from crying. But those weren't tears of heartbreak. They were tears of anguish over time wasted, tears of rage over being stabbed in the back by someone she'd seen as a partner. Thinking back on the events now, she felt her eyes prickle with tears again, but then she was struck with the sudden mental image of Claude gazing at the Amanita muscaria mushroom, and immediately those tears dried back up. What the heck was that all about? It was a splendid Amanita muscaria that had sprouted on Claude's hand, to be sure. Beautiful even, but that wasn't the part she was hung up on. I doubt I'll ever see him again anyway. Whatever. Right. She was better off forgetting about everything that had happened. She was going to be very busy starting tomorrow. Clutching the blanket, Agnes curled into a ball and fell into a deep sleep. Okay. Oh, we get a little factoid of the day. Okay. Hang on. I got a freaking hair was in my way. Hang on. Mushroom of the day. Amanita muscaria. With its blood red umbrella cap and white dots, this iconic toadstool is the first thing many people think of when it comes to poisonous mushrooms. Fairly lethal, this toadstool was once used for catching flies. I wonder how it works. It may resemble the I-ups from a certain video game... Oh, 1-ups! From a certain video game franchise you may have heard of, but you wouldn't want to try eating a real one. Yeah, Mario. That's the whole thing for that. Chapter 1. The Peach Blossom-Colored Mushroom Princess. Mushroom Princess? What the fuck is that? When Agnes opened her eyes, the room was already bright. She sat up and stretched, but her arms as high as they can go. Okay, time to figure out what I'm going to do now. After that little scene she caused, no one would want to marry her now. She was damaged goods. No, she's not damaged goods. Philip was the one who wanted to end the engagement, and he was cheating on her. So if she had been the one to do all that, then yes, she would be damaged goods. But no, she's not. She's just a victim. But to be honest, she didn't really want to get married anyway. Still, she couldn't just stay home like this, cluttering up the place and being a burden. In actuality, Agnes was the daughter of Count Lefort's younger sister. In other words, she was his niece. Her mother had married a commoner, so until she was 11 years old, Agnes had been raised as one too. After losing both her parents in a carriage accident, she'd been taken in by her uncle, Count Lefort. Count Lefort's wife had also been riding in that carriage, so he'd lost both his wife and younger sister in the same accident. Ooh, that sucks. Agnes was the sole survivor of that accident, and she was forever grateful to her uncle for taking her in when she had no other family to turn to. Agnes was 18 now, and over the past 7 years her uncle had showered her with love and affection, raising her to want for nothing. So naturally, she simply couldn't bear to do anything to inconvenience him. Agnes's birth father had been a foreigner from a neighboring country. The Visage kingdom was ruled over by the Visage royal family, who had dragon blood, but her father's country was different. It was rife with divine spirits who protected the land. Agnes's peach blossom colored hair could be attributed to that part of her heritage. Her eyes were also a vivid green, the color of verdigris, another feature considered very unusual in the Visage kingdom. I'm guessing green eyes are rare. Agnes's unusual appearance was considered unsightly in Visage, where the people were unfamiliar with the spirits. As a result, she drew unwanted attention towards herself and her family. Women of the aristocracy wore their hair long as a rule, so Agnes couldn't simply cut off her peach blossom locks. She'd tried dyeing it several times, but something always went wrong and the color didn't take. Perhaps it was because of her hair texture. Who knows? Her younger brother Kevin would carry the family name, so Agnes was spared that burden. Still, she'd hate to do anything to jeopardize his recent official entry into society. It was a very delicate time. So, the best thing for me to do is to return to common life. Having grown up a commoner, Agnes could do most things like housework herself. Even while living as a count's daughter, she continued to help maintain the household. She was glad she did too, when she caught her first glimpse of Philip's sound temper. Agnes had decided then and there to make sure she could always take care of herself so that if one day Philip sprang a divorce on her in a sudden fit of rage, she wouldn't be totally ruined. Still, I never expected this to happen during the engagement stage. I guess he spared me from experiencing it later. Yep, better you find out now. Philip had proven himself to be more of a fool than Agnes had ever expected. But then again, this was practically bound to have happened sooner or later. She might as well return to common life while she still had her health and youth. Most aristocrats would faint in horror at the prospect of having to live as a commoner. In fact, they could imagine no greater punishment. But Agnes didn't really mind at all. In this way, she wouldn't have to watch that cheater Philip live out his days. Yes, she'd be spared that particular eyesore. This is actually the best possible outcome if you think about it. So, I think I'll just go back to living as a commoner. Renoit Lefort gazed his niece seated before him, his brows knitted in consternation. You think? But Agnes, what's made you think this way? I was dumped in front of the ton at a high society party. I'm obviously damaged goods now. No one will come to seek my hand in marriage again. So, to avoid being a burden on the household, I feel it's better to return to common society. Agnes spoke cheerfully, but Benoit sighed. I heard about last night's incident. It does sound awful, but Philip was obviously in the wrong. Besides, the man himself admitted that he'd been carrying on an affair for the past month in front of everyone. Yes, he did admit that, didn't he? Gosh, what a brain-dead thing to do. Philip really is a royal idiot. Even if that idiocy of his does lend him immunity to the mushrooms. Maybe the dragons are immune to the mushrooms, I guess? I'm certain most people will be on... Oh, then again, he was claiming to have dragon blood in his veins, but I'm assuming he doesn't. So maybe anybody that... I don't know. Because, I mean, it happened to Claude, so he's not immune. Then again, I don't think he really minds that. I'm certain most people will be on your side, Benoit continued. I'm not saying we'll have suitors knocking down our door, but there's no need to throw it all away and go back to being a commoner. Even if you never marry, you'll always be a child of this household, Agnes. Agnes had always loved her Uncle Benoit's golden hair and red-brown eyes. If only I'd been born with normal-colored hair, perhaps all this could have been avoided. You might have still had the mushroom stuff, but still. I'm still grateful to you, first, for taking me in, Father, even though I am your niece. And I love Kevin, too. I love you both. So you see, I don't want to be a burden to either of you. And I'm telling you, you can never be a burden to us. You were hurt the most by yesterday's unpleasantness. You should take some time to heal. You can always plan out what to do next later. There's no rush. Philip was only really a fringe member of the royal family, yes, but their engagement had been warmly welcomed. Her uncle had every right to scold Agnes for losing this key opportunity, which would have only led to prosperity for the Lefort household. The fact that he was being so kind despite this made Agnes' heart swell with love for him. Please, don't be nice to me right now. I don't want to start sprouting mushrooms on you. As long as they're edible, I can say sprout away. Oh, he likes to make a joke out of it. That's good. For you, Father, I'd sprout the finest edible mushrooms around. You mean Matsutake? I could go for a couple right now. But listen, Agnes, I want you to take some more time. Think things over. Alright. Agnes had been so sure that a return to common life would solve all her problems, but it was clear she wasn't going to get the permission she needed from her uncle. Without Benoit's approval and support, it'd be hard to get started as a commoner on her own. After all, it was very difficult for a young, single woman to rent a place to stay on her own. Not that she'd any money to pay rent on other living expenses. You needed money up front. Which means I need to get some funds together. Up until now, Agnes had always asked her uncle for money, but that wasn't an option anymore. I could always sell some things I don't need and make money that way. I mean, I know what she could do. She could sprout the mushrooms and sell the edible ones in the market. Why not? Agnes returned to her room and pulled out all of her dresses. They were all simple and sort of drab, as at Philip's request. Philip had always wanted to tie up and hide her stunning hair so it wouldn't be so noticeable. After all, the people of Visage tended to turn their noses up at it. He always wanted her to keep her clothing and makeup as plain and underrated as possible. Jerk. If he really cared about her, he would have been flaunting her to everybody, claiming that she was his. But obviously, we see he doesn't care. She'd go along with his demands. She knew her hair stood out in a bad way, and she preferred to fly under the radar to reduce the number of strangers who approached her. She regretted it now, though. Dresses in this sort of boring color palette would be difficult to sell. Well, maybe dresses like this would appeal more to older women. I should give it a try, at least. You can ask. Lady Agnes, have you finished your meeting with his lordship? The bath is all prepared for you. Agnes turned to see her maid, Therese, a plump woman who worked nimbly and speedily despite her stature. Thank you. I'll be heading out once I've had my bath. Therese, could you put these dresses together in a bundle for me? Whatever do you plan to do with all these dresses, my lady? Agnes flashed a brilliant smile at Therese. I'm going to sell them. The whole lot of them. They may be in drab, but Agnes's dresses were finely made and of considerable quality. She was a count's daughter, after all. She would have no use for these as a commoner. She could start afresh if she got rid of them all at once. She'd sell her jewelry and accessories as well, apart from a few sentimental pieces. All she needed was a few simple pinafore dresses for everyday wear. Agnes wasn't sure what she was going to do with Claude's handkerchief. She made up her mind to ask Uncle Benoit to dispose of it for her when she left home for good. After ruminating in the bath and solidifying her plans, Agnes dried off and slipped her arms through the sleeves of one of her simple dresses. Lady Agnes, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, it's fine. But these are all the dresses you own. They were all Philip's taste anyway, not mine. Besides, I have no occasion to wear them in the future. I can at least benefit from them if I sell them. But what do you intend to do with the money? It'll be put to good use. Frowning, Therese fell silent as she carried the bundle of dresses for Agnes. Hang on. Let me check the time. Dang it. There. Okay, only 12 minutes. Alright. Sorry, I had to make sure. I don't want to do too much. By carriage, Agnes made her way to a most convenient little shop. It sold a variety of things and bought second-hand items, too. As Agnes was busily creating a mountain of dresses atop the shop counter, a man in his early 30s emerged from the back. Sorry. Oh, she does sell her mushrooms! Good day to you, Lady Lefort. Mushrooms again today, is it? No, not this time. Today I was hoping to sell these dresses. The man nodded sagely, casting his eye across the dress mountain. I see. Alright, let's take a look-see. The man began combing through the pile of dresses, examining each one and making notes on a notepad with his appraisal. He was the owner of this little shop, and Agnes was a regular customer. She made herself comfortable on a nearby sofa and waited for the shopkeeper to finish. Well, they're all of fine quality, but these colors are so drab. Yes, I know, they might not sell among women my age, but I was thinking that elderly ladies might like them. With a few simple ornamentations added, they might. I'll have to make some adjustments, so let's factor that into the price. And the jewelry is very nice as well. That should solve no problem. Alright, how about this much? The shopkeeper finished his appraisal swiftly and handed Agnes a piece of money. A piece of paper. Depending on how much money he was offering, making arrangements to leave home was either about to get a good deal easier or not. Nervously, Agnes reached for the piece of paper and accidentally bumped hands with the shopkeeper. Oh. At that exact instant, 5 brown mushrooms sprouted on the length of his arm. Oopsie! Each one appeared in sequence with a series of cute popping noises. Agnes slowly lifted her eyes to meet the shopkeeper's. Oh, please forgive me, my lady. I did not mean to touch your hand. No, it was my fault. Seemingly used to this kind of thing, the shopkeeper plucked the mushrooms off his arm and examined them in a bunch. Lephalum decastes, the chicken of the gravel. Quite edible, but not particularly rare. I can't give you much for them, but if you'd like to sell, please accept them as a token of my esteem instead. If you insist, then gladly. A tasty little mushroom, this one. Very firm, very toothsome. Agnes sighed as she watched the shopkeeper hurry into the back of the shop, smiling and clutching the handful of mushrooms. The reason why Agnes had become a regular patron of the shop, it all came down to the mushrooms. She had developed a fear of men ever since her commoner days, when they would flock to her in droves and make all kinds of passes at her because of her peach blossom-colored hair. As a result, the protective spirits that dwelled within her reacted to this fear by, for some inexplicable reason... Oh, she's got spirits inside her. Okay. Causing mushrooms to sprout on any man who approached her. Men Agnes found particularly intimidating would be blighted with the biggest, most poisonous of mushrooms in great numbers. The neighborhood boys who teased her took to calling Agnes the Peach Blossom Mushroom Princess as they fled from her, their bodies covered in clusters of mushrooms. It had hardly been the best of childhoods. But Agnes felt safe with the men of her family. Mushrooms hardly ever sputtered on her adopted father, Benoit, or her brother Kevin. When they did, they were of the harmless, tasty, and edible varieties. In the early days of their engagement, Philip had been the hapless recipient of spontaneous mushroom sprouting as well. But bit by bit, as Agnes got to know him and realized how daft he truly was, he almost seemed to become immune. Hardly any mushrooms sprouted on Philip by the end. Once Agnes began seeing Philip as an incompetent younger brother, the mushroom magic all but stopped working on him. So if you think someone is incompetent and an idiot, then they become immune to it. Okay. So, yes, Philip's fungal immunity had been a major point in his favor. But that hardly mattered anymore. After all, he'd broken off their engagement for good. Unable to accept the prospect of a marriage smothered in mushrooms, Agnes had given up the idea altogether. Benoit could use his connections to find her someone understanding and trustworthy, no doubt. But until he dropped his bombshell, she thought she'd already found that in Philip. She couldn't risk trusting another man again. Besides, she could somehow sense that the mushroom reflex had only grown stronger now. She'd missed her one chance. Alright, I've sold my most valuable possessions. It's time to think about what else I can do to make money. Back in her bedroom, Agnes was gazing down at her remaining dresses with her arms crossed. These were among the ones she'd taken to the shop, but the shopkeeper had rejected them for being too drab to sell. She'd no further use for them either, but they were still made of good quality material, drab or not. She couldn't just throw them away. Agnes got out her sewing kit and brandished a pair of fabric shears. "What are you doing, sis?" While Agnes was engrossed in her sewing, a figure spoke to her from the nearby chair. Kevin was sitting in that chair the whole time. It was her younger brother Kevin, with his golden hair and reddish-brown eyes. He was her cousin by blood and brother through adoption. He'd lost his mother the same day she'd lost hers. What does it look like? Making a skirt. And a hair ribbon. What for? Taking apart some old dresses. Hate to just throw them away. But why? Why are you taking your dresses apart? Oh, Kevin, you haven't heard? Agnes explained about her engagement being off, which was why she no longer needed these drab dresses, and was why she was taking them apart. Kevin sighed and rolled his eyes. Gosh, sis, why are you always so melodramatic? And anyway, all your dresses are drab. You'll have nothing left to wear. Well, these are the ones that were far too drab to even sell. I'm going to cut them up and make them into a skirt and hair ribbon. You shouldn't be doing that. It's not appropriate behavior for a count's daughter. That's seamstress work. What are you trying to do, sis? I was about to get married to a royal, you know. Well, royal adjacent. I was going to be a countess. But now I've got a new plan. I'm going to become a commoner instead. But why? Kevin shot a glance at Therese, who had just walked in holding a tray of tea. They shared a nod and a conspiratorial sigh together. All right. I'm fine with you giving up the dresses. After all, you only bought those ugly things to appease Lord Philip and his odd fixation. But there's no need to try and sell them. Or cut them up. Fixation? I forgot that part. It hardly matters anymore. All I'm saying is, now you can wear nice colorful dresses again. I'm sure you look lovely in them. Indeed, ever since getting engaged to Philip, Agnes has slowly replaced her entire wardrobe of colorful dresses with bland, boring ones. No. I'm aiming for a commoner life. I won't need fancy gowns anymore. Why, though? Why do you have to go to such lengths? You haven't done anything wrong. No, really. Not wrong, sis. It's fine. Philip's the one who went off and had an affair and called up your engagement and made a scene, not you. Even so, no one's going to want Philip's reject now. And if I stay at home, I'll end up putting off your future bridal prospects, too. Kevin, no one wants to deal with a jilted spinster sister-in-law who was rejected by a royal suitor, now do they? I'd never put that burden on your shoulders. No, Agnes would rather die than become a burden to her beloved family. So, you're going to become a commoner? Yep. I'm pretty confident that I can handle it. I'm sturdy, you know. I could be a seamstress, or even work in the fields. After all, I was raised as a commoner. It should be easy to slip right back into it. Kevin shook his head as Agnes grinned at him, her fist balled up in a display of bravado. But you're missing the point. I don't want you to go back to being a commoner. Neither does Father. Thank you, Kevin. It's sweet of you to say that. Agnes had been blessed with a loving family and counted herself lucky for it. That was why she was doing this. It was all for them. Agnes smiled as her dress shears sliced through fabric. Mushroom of the day. Matsutake, a high-grade mushroom known by most. What better reason to check out the roots of a pine tree than to locate one of these mushrooms? But am I the only one whose mind jumps straight to Matsutake soup before the actual mushroom itself? Oh, okay, we get to find out about the mushrooms we hear about in the chapter. Cool. Liophyllum dicastes, chicken of the gravel. An edible mushroom with an ashy gray umbrella-shaped cap. It looks rather like a shapeless, unenthusiastic shiitake mushroom. Firm textured with a rich flavor, it cooks up well. I could go for one right now. Blech! I don't like mushrooms. Okay, hang on. I'm at chapter 2. Wow. Okay, I'll keep going a little bit more. Sorry, guys. I had to make sure I don't want to keep going and end up being like 50 minutes into something. That's a long reading. Chapter 2, Mushroom Sensitivity Intensifies. Ooh, what's going to happen this? Agnes sewed late into the night and ended up making 5 new skirts. She'd managed to make the skirts so much cuter by sewing white lace onto the drab material. Or at least she was pretty satisfied with them. Lace had caught on as a fad with commoner women lately, so lace-adorned clothing was seen as somewhat luxurious. Agnes visited town regularly to see what the common folk were up to. She figured that'd help her blend in more easily if she ended up having to return there someday. The new skirts were good quality and should fetch a decent price despite their admittedly bland colors. At any rate, any better than just throwing them out. Filled with a sense of accomplishment that blew away the last dregs of her exhaustion, Agnes decided to head to the shop right away. She washed her face, changed into a simple dress, and opened the front door to make her way to the carriage. But the door opened instead onto a world of bright pink flowers. Is someone standing there holding bright pink flowers? Are you Count Lafort's daughter? Agnes froze as someone spoke to her from behind the flowers. I guess he had a gigantic bouquet. She looked up and realized the large bouquet was being clutched by a man with black hair and russet brown eyes. But the way he was dressed, he was clearly a member of the aristocracy. She'd never seen this man before, though. Perhaps he's one of Philip's squires. Doubt it. Agnes had no idea why Philip would have dispatched his squire to her residence, but he was surely up to no good. The best thing to do would be to avoid engaging with this nonsense altogether. What do you want? I'm in a hurry. Let me by. As Agnes tried to brush past him, the man forced the bouquet into her hands. From His Royal Highness. Upon hearing those words, Agnes snapped. Flowers? He thought flowers were a good idea? After he publicly dumped and humiliated me. Tell him to give these to his new woman. I'm just a fake, don't you know? I'm thinking that was from Claude. 'Cause he's not the only royal you know. Agnes threw the flowers back at the square and dashed past, leaping into the safety of her carriage. It seemed she'd accidentally made contact with the young man, however. A cluster of white mushrooms had just sprouted from the toe of his boot. They looked like a clump of Copernalis disseminatus. Agnes pretended she hadn't noticed them. The man was Philip's squire, so either he already knew about Agnes's strange fungal effect, or he'd be able to find out from Philip when he returned. Either way, it wasn't her problem. Agnes sighed as the horses set off at a fast trot. What was Philip thinking? And why now? Was he trying to apologize with flowers? Perhaps he'd been scolded for causing so much trouble, and this was a pathetic attempt to save face. The pink flowers were very lovely, but even the prettiest bouquet lacks appeal when it's a gift from someone you don't care about. Yeah, I'm guessing that is not Philip. I'm guessing that's Claude. You should have asked which Royal Highness, because you know more than one. The squire would no doubt invoke Philip's wrath when he returned, flowers still in hand. But that wasn't Agnes's fault. She wasn't obligated to accept Philip's gift just to cover for a squire she didn't know. I'm going to forget all about this unpleasantness. I have to get these skirts sold. Agnes was still slightly irritated, but did her best to put it out of her mind. The skirts ended up selling for more than she'd expected, which was enough to put her in a much better mood. Hello? Hello? It was the squire with the black hair and russet brown eyes. He'd come back to her residence. Or perhaps he'd never left. This time, however, he'd announced himself officially and been granted an audience with the head of the household. Unfortunately, since both her father and Kevin were out, this meant that Agnes was obligated to receive him. Philip may have been a philandering idiot, but he was still technically a royal, so Agnes couldn't decline to receive an official royal squire, much less turn him away at the door. What a disgusting example of class privilege. Agnes sighed under her breath. The man was seated across from her in the drawing room, but there was no sign of any mushrooms on the toe of his boots. He must have plucked them off at some point. Either that, or they fell off without him noticing. If Philip hadn't briefed him on Agnes's mushroom issue, then the young man would have no doubt been most perplexed by the incident. While Agnes was still idly wondering what had happened to the mushrooms, the young man placed a white envelope on the table between them. This is an official invitation to a ball. I was told to hand it directly to Count Lefort's daughter. If Agnes accepted the invitation letter, it'd be unfeasible for her to decline attending the actual event later. Not after meeting with the messenger in person and actually taking possession of the envelope. No, it'd be the height of bad manners. Our engagement's over. There's no reason for me to be invited to balls anymore. I told you it's Claude, not Philip. Philip has no reason to talk to you. Agnes figured the best thing to do was decline straight away without even picking up the invitation. But her words seemed to startle the young man. He shook his head earnestly. No, my lady. This is not invitation from Lord Philip, but one from Prince Claude. I told you. Say what? Agnes brought her hand to her mouth quickly. Goodness. I used commoner's speech. It made no sense, and yet why would a royal squire have been sent to tease and trick her? This had to mean that she really was invited to a ball, and by Prince Claude himself. But that made even less sense. Either way, there's no reason for me to be invited to royal balls anymore, so I respectfully decline. Agnes shook her head firmly, but the young man began to look more panicked. Your attendance is strongly desired. I shall decline. Please, all you have to do is make a brief appearance. 5 minutes. Easier said than done. I've no ball gown to wear anymore. So, you see, my hands are tied. Agnes went for stark honesty in the hopes of bringing this endless conversation to a swift end. But the squire was relentless. You could just wear a regular dress. The young man was mistaken. He seemed to think Agnes was being precocious about not having anything fancy enough to wear. He was wrong. No, I mean I haven't a single ball gown, party dress, or fancy frock to my name. I'm sorry? The young man's jaw dropped. Why not? I intend to return to commoner life. I've already disposed of everything I'll no longer need. The young man's jaw dropped even lower, the goofy look on his face clasped with his refined features. Oh dear, what's Claude gonna say? He's probably gonna get her a dress. I can't possibly show up to a royal ball attended by the royal family wearing a shabby day dress now, can I? So you see, I must decline. But it's still 3 days away. There's still time for you to... I'm going back to commoner life, so I can't get a new dress tailored now. It's completely out of the question. Agnes knew she wasn't being proper, but this young man was giving her no choice. Besides, she had her own life to live. Anyway, why am I being sent an invitation? My father's going to deal with everything involving the engagement dissolving, so I've got nothing to do with the royal family anymore. Ah, no, it's not about that. The prince wishes to speak with you. Speak about what? I think you should ask him directly. The squire was being vague. Too vague. Agnes got to her feet, struck with suspicion. Take this, please. The young man frowned as Agnes held out the white handkerchief she'd retrieved from her room. See, it's fine. I haven't done anything to it. Return it for me, would you? And tell the prince thank you very much for his assistance. Claude was another royal just like Philip, but he had made her feel a little better. She was grateful for that. The royal family was probably worried she would try to use Claude's handkerchief as a protest to get close to the prince. The prince was unmarried and always been swarmed by eager women. An errant handkerchief was cause a lot of problems. So, that's the sort of woman they think I am, is it? Things with Philip didn't work out, so now I'm just moving on to the next royal prospect? Agnes felt her hands ball into fists in irritation, but decided to shake it off. The royal family was none of her business anymore. She thrust the handkerchief into the squire's hand. Looking lost, the young man kept glancing back and forth between the handkerchief and her face. Ah, I must have accidentally touched him. An akamamitake mushroom just sprouted from his throat. I'm not going to be able to pronounce these words, I'm sorry. Actually, it was 2 caps that sprouted. They were a muted yellowish-orange color. That's kind of strange, but luckily he doesn't seem to notice them, so it's not my problem. The two mushroom caps seemed to have sprouted into each other and became damaged. Yellowish juice was seeping onto the young man's clothes. But luckily he hasn't noticed it yet, so that's not my problem either. Please take the handkerchief and leave at once. Agnes stood up again and quickly left the room. She had no idea why Claude would want to invite her to a ball, but since he had gone so far as to have his squire officially call on her, he was probably serious. No doubt she hadn't heard the end of this. Still, wake not a sleeping spirit, and ye shall come to no harm, as the saying goes. More like, tangle not with a royal, and ye shall encounter no strife. The best thing to do, she reckoned, was to leave the royal capital at once, before she brought any further trouble upon her household. Agnes hurried off to her room. She could use the remaining fabric to make another skirt. Okay, I think I'm gonna end this part off here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.